Okay, so here we go. Of Mice and Men.
See?
From 2012.
Yep.
With Section A, because it's always based on an extract, I would contend that you don't need to plan. How do you feel?
No, my when I plan
Yes.
for this question,
Yes.
I have a quote from Section A and an expansion from Section B.
Okay.
And so that means I don't have to go looking for quotes, because I'm better with Of Mice and Men for quotes anyway.
Oh, I see. So does that mean that you'll think about your plan when you finish Section A, or you'll think about it in advance?
I don't do Section A then Section B.
Okay.
I write it like I do Section A, expansion, point in Section B, expansion, point in Section C, and they're always really easy to link if you use your words well.
Oh, so you write it all as one coherent essay?
Yeah.
And you expect the examiner to chop it up into Section A and Section B?
Yeah. Sound alright?
I think that's a high-risk strategy.
Really?
Yeah, and the reason for that is because of the words and then. So where's that? Here. So I think the examiner's saying, look, in order for me to mark this, can you do it in both parts? However, having said that, yeah, exactly. When we look at the mark scheme for Section B, let's just check that that's the right one. Yes, it is, Section B. The skills aren't split over Section A and B at all.
No.
So, when I look at the mark scheme, your technique will work. You can just write about the whole thing. Alright.
Well, it's the same mark scheme as in spectacles, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and that annoys me because what you'll see when I flash this over is we're now looking at AO4 as well, even though the mark scheme's the same. Whereas before we were just looking at AO2.
Yeah.
However, I think that's a fairer way of marking. At AQA, they're not making a big deal about AO4, they just expect you to put it in. And the reason you're going to put it in is Section B forces you to. If you're writing about how women are portrayed in society, that forces you to write about AO4. So you've taught me something good again here. You don't have to split your answer between Section A and B. You're going to write it as one holistic piece.
Let's hope so, otherwise I'm getting a D.
No, you're not. Right, can you underline for me
Yes.
the keywords in Section B?
Right, first of all, I never do this in exam.
I know, but this is an instructional video, and it's also teaching you what you do.
I'll go for present,
Yeah?
and I'll go for women, and I'll go for society.
Yeah, okay.
And probably when, but when is just implied.
Well, yes, it is, isn't it? Because it's when the novel is set,
Yeah.
so set gives us when.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. Right, I'm really happy with that. So let's look at the passage, and you're just going to talk me through the things that you pick out.
Yes.
All right?
Give me a bit of passage then.
Bit of passage.
Sounds a bit odd.
That's my boy.
Where are we going to?
Yeah, I've marked it.
Yeah, I was looking at where the finish was.
Okay.
Okay, well that's obvious metaphor, wasn't it? First line.
Go on.
No, I'm underlining first.
No, let's talk about each one as we go.
Okay,
so it's a
rectangular
metaphor for what?
sunshine. It's a really obvious. Well, you could take it two ways, which gives you your exploration.
Yes.
It could be the sunshine is a halo around her head.
Yes.
Or it's completely cut off and she's cut off the sunshine, cut off the hope of their dreams.
Right, and what would the halo represent?
The halo would be her innocence.
Oh, right, so underlying it all, she's quite an innocent figure.
Yes.
And would you be able to use the description of her death to back that up?
Yes, and you could juxtapose the description of her death to the description when we first meet her, which is nearly exactly the same, apart from she's dead in the second one.
Brilliant, that's a really clever idea. Have you done that in class? Did your teacher get you to do it?
We all say that.
What do you mean we all say that?
I'll go and say yes, our teacher did make us do it.
I see, but you're lying to me, aren't you? She didn't. Defending her. That's
no. When
it's
we
not
did,
you don't need to defend her because
she might watch it when we watch.
I think the last one she watched, she put a dislike on my YouTube channel.
That was probably someone else. When we did the coursework in Of Mice and Men, we went through this, and you told me about that. So
damn, I taught you that.
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay, never mind. I'd forgotten that. Okay. Next quotation.
Alright, well, you might want to use any of these quotations, which would be same as her depth of rouged lips and the heavily made up bit. That would be good for the section B where you expand.
Yes, it would.
Contrast the attitudes towards the same thing.
And let's talk about what they represent here.
Anything to do with red. Well, these are very sexual,
Yes.
prostitute-like imagery.
Yes.
Lots of red, lots of danger and promiscuity.
And why is she portrayed as promiscuous in this image then? Why has Steinbeck done that?
Well, I think he wants us to take through a journey as of looking at a character differently.
Yeah.
So we see this is our expectation of the woman.
Yes.
And we know that that's how we'd look at her initially.
Yes.
And then when she dies, Steinbeck shows us that she's not this at all, and in fact, as a reader, we were disgusting and
So
bad
we
people.
were discussing, the readers were bad people.
Well, he doesn't actually say anything promiscuous here, does he?
You're right.
He just does a description of what she's wearing with
Yeah.
colours.
Okay.
And so I think he's trying to show us the damage of impressions.
Okay. And so because we fall in
women.
with the male impressions on the ranch,
Yes.
we then realise how much we've damaged her.
Interestingly, I think a woman would have the same impressions when reading
Yes.
the book.
Okay, right. Find me another quotation.
Okay. Well, I could use any of these, but I want one that I could expand on.
Okay.
Body was thrown forward, that's the same imagery, so I probably wouldn't use that. This one's interesting,
Yes.
because Lenny is so foolish that he shouldn't really understand sexual nature, and he's almost seen not to in a lot of it,
I agree.
but the way he looks at her is very sexual.
So, why has Steinbeck done that?
Oh, this is animalistic, I think.
Ah, okay. So predatory.
Predatory. Well, I think he's just saying that the nature of the man
Yes.
is to see the woman sexually,
Okay.
when in fact that leads to bad things.
Right.
And a
Bad
woman,
things is pretty weak,
yes.
though. Be specific.
Oh, well, yeah. She dies, their plans are destroyed.
Yes.
Well, it's the whole book, isn't it, really?
Yes, it is.
And
I hadn't noticed this before until you pointed it out, but this use of the word body is also exactly as she could be described
at the end.
in the final scene, yes. So that technique's foreshadowing
Yes.
her eventual death and the fact actually he's her killer.
Yeah.
Okay. Find me something else.
Then there's the fascination where we go from Lenny being... I know this isn't actually in the question, so I shouldn't really be talking about this. But,
Yes, 'cause it's not directly her, is
I
it?
could direct it to the question.
Go on.
Because Lenny is seeing her as this sexual object.
Yes.
And then he's fascinated, which is a very unsexual word, really, isn't it?
Agreed.
And because he's a simple-minded fellow, we see... I think there's a lot of simple-mindedness being better than the rest of the men, because he's very unjudgmental, especially when we see Crooks in the rest of the book.
Yes. But now you
And the
are
same with the woman.
straying into...
Same woman. Yeah, I was just going off on a
Yeah.
tangent. Okay, this is still the same as the... No one can't blame a person for looking. That's where we perhaps see that it's her fault
Yes.
that she is, and she is seen this way, and it's the only time Steinbeck really gives us, she's a bit... Whoa.
So it's the only time he's strongly hinting at a promiscuity here.
Yeah.
Although to be promiscuous, you have to act on your sexual desire and have different partners.
Yes.
And actually, she's never promiscuous actually within the events of the book, is she?
No.
Can we look at her past history and how she married Curly and say that's an example of her promiscuity or not?
We could. I think I'd more go for foolishness,
Yes.
and then to link to the question, attitudes to women as foolish and weak, and you can take advantage of them,
Right.
as she is taken advantage of both by Curly, because she is very upset that she hasn't got into this Hollywood scene, and
Yes.
Curly pounces upon her almost,
Yes.
it seems, and then the guy that promised he'd take her to Hollywood, just probably for sex, I don't know. I
Yes,
imagine.
I'm sure that was the reason for his promise.
That's another.
So rather than her exploiting men through her promiscuity and sexual attraction, we see the opposite. Her past history reveals how she's been exploited.
Well, you could do both. You could say that she doesn't love a man at all.
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter to her. All she wants is to be famous,
Yes.
to be rich. So she just finds a man and then has sex with them to get where she wants. It seems. Or you could argue that. I'd argue the other way. Well, I'd argue both, but
Yes.
I'd be more leaning the other way.
Is Steinbeck therefore saying that it's poverty itself which has caused this in women?
I'd say
the
more,
need to escape.
I'd say more expectation.
Go on.
The expectation for a woman to get to a high place is to sleep around, and so it's no longer. There's no another option.
I see.
It's what you have to do.
Yeah, so it's either through sex or marriage
Through sex
that
or
as a
marriage.
woman you can progress in this society. Okay. And does Steinbeck blame women for this, or does he blame society?
Well, I think that's one of the big questions where you could argue both ways.
Okay.
I think Steinbeck thinks it's a fault of society, because the whole book is about a fault of society, whether it's the fault of man, the fault of people being, the fault of racism,
Yes.
and like in this question, sexism.
Okay.
So, but you wouldn't use that just because that was B.
Okay. Right, let's look at something from the rest of the passage.
This is interesting, although it's a bit more like about Slim, but it's
Yes.
still an attitude to a woman, so you could still use it
Yes.
effectively. Well, that's quite flirtatious,
Yes.
even though Slim is this godlike character.
Yeah.
Yet he's not encouraging her. Shall we
Yeah,
say.
yeah. So
Which is very
actually,
strange.
there's a bit of a moral problem here. He ought to steer away from concentrating on her appearance and sexuality, but he does the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think Slim's a two-way kind of guy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Right. Slim Shady.
yeah, nearly dad.
Didn't appreciate my M&M
It
reference
was very
there.
good. It was very good.
Carry on.
And then he's very abrupt again here, but we won't talk about that
No,
because that's
because
too
we're
much
focusing
Slim.
on her. Yeah. agreed.
Suddenly apprehensive. That's not an attitude. Well, you could use that as an attitude towards women. I mean, it's not very hard to turn it around, but
Well, yeah. What's she apprehensive about? I mean, that's
that
going to help me.
Curly would have found that she's not in the bunkhouse and
Yes.
be coming to get her.
And
Maybe she'd be scared of abuse.
okay, so if we're looking at section B,
Yeah.
the attitudes to women. So Steinbeck here is hinting at physical abuse. Do you think?
You could argue that. I'd first argue that the attitude to women he's talking about here is the controlling nature of a relationship where the man
Good.
is in control of the woman,
Excellent.
not the other way around, and that control leads the woman to flirt and have this desire
To escape control.
escape control.
Right. Okay.
See that a lot nowadays.
So
Over controlling parenting backfires.
Yes. absolutely true. That in fact the research does show that.
It does.
In fact, interestingly, in educational terms,
Okay.
one of the groups of children who do worse are the ones where parents control everything. You know, like the hours of TV you can watch, when you can use your phone and stuff like that.
So I do so badly.
I'm leaving it in.
Okay. You come off worse.
Oh dear. Right, let's look at the mark scheme. So, I need a pokey thing.
Pencil.
Pencil, I'll poke with that then.
It's a bit weird.
You've just lost the lead! Give me a knife.
There you go.
Thanks, knife boy. Okay. So we've definitely explored. You've definitely been insightful. You've linked it to the wider themes. Obviously, you've gone into close analysis because you've been quoting. Every time you talked about alternative interpretations, you've evaluated. And you've used telling details. So, our next question is, did we get away with doing section A and B at the same time? So have you looked at the attitudes of women in society? Yes, you have. Have you talked about the 1930s when it's set? Yes, you have. So once again, you've hit the A-star
I
criteria.
mean, the problem is with doing it in section A and B, it becomes incredibly difficult to link anything.
That's true, it's too mechanical, isn't it? And it's much better just to write it as one coherent piece.
Yes.
That's why teachers should do the exam they set the students.
I've argued for that. In fact, our geography department's doing our exam, but it's geography, so, you know.
You mean it's general knowledge, it doesn't matter?
Yeah.
No, it still matters though. You will learn something as a teacher.
You should do it.
I have. I did GCSEs when it came out. I did it with my students to find out how to teach it.
Did it go well?
It went very well. I got an A-star. The hardest bit was doing all my coursework over the weekend. So I had to write, I don't know, 5 pieces or something.
Dara Breen took a GCSE maths exam,
Yeah.
did it in 10 minutes on a live radio show and got an A-star.
Yeah, but to be fair, he had done a
Were you that
degree
good?
in physics, hadn't
Were
he?
you that good, Dad?
Well, you can't in English because you have to keep writing. So it's just the volume of writing that would
So
stop
you've
you.
got an A-star in English GCSE?
Yeah, as well as my O-level.
And an O-level.
Yeah, check me out. And a 2-1 degree.
That's rubbish though, isn't it?
It is now, everyone gets a bloody 2-1 degree, but when I did it, hardly anyone went to university. Anyway, enough waffle. Good luck with your revision.